Imagine an aircraft able to haul 150 tons of cargo farther than any freighter in history. The Airbus A380F, engineered to shatter Boeing's dominance and transform global logistics. It promised the impossible, with industry giants signing on before a single rivet was set. Not one A380 freighter ever took flight. How did aviation's most ambitious cargo project unravel before liftoff? And what buried truths did its failure expose? The real story begins before the first blueprint was even drawn. In the late 1980s, as jumbo jets ruled the skies, Airbus engineers gathered in Toulouse to study a question that bordered on audacious. Could Europe build an aircraft so vast, so capable, that it would dethrone the Boeing 747 in every arena, including cargo? Early feasibility studies filled internal memos and boardroom conversations, sketching out a future where Airbus would not just match the American giant, but surpass it. By 1990, the idea took on a public face, and the project, then known as a 3XX, was formally announced. This was not just a technical challenge, it was a statement of intent. Airbus wanted to redefine what was possible for both passengers and freight, and the world was watching. Throughout the 1990s, the vision sharpened. Market analysts tracked a surge in global trade, and air cargo volumes rose year after year. The logic seemed unbreakable. If more people and goods were moving across continents, the next leap would be bigger planes, bigger payloads, and fewer stops. By 1994, Airbus revealed its plans to the public, promising an aircraft that would rewrite the rules of long-haul transport. The A3XX was pitched as a family, one core design, two destinies: a super jumbo for passengers and a freighter that would carry more cargo farther than any aircraft before it. Inside Airbus, the stakes were enormous. The board approved the formal launch of the A380 program in December 2000. Backed by an investment of 9.5 billion euros and a roster of launch customers ready to gamble on the future. The freighter variant, the A380F, was written into the program from the outset. FedEx, UPS, and leasing giant ILFC signed early agreements, betting that this new aircraft would unlock a new era in global logistics. For Airbus, the A380F was more than a derivative. It was the ultimate proof that Europe could set the pace in every corner of aviation, from first-class suites to the cavernous holds of intercontinental freighters. The ambition was clear, nothing less than a new world order in the skies. On paper, the A380F's numbers were almost mythical. Engineers promised a payload of 150 metric tons, eclipsing anything flying at the time. The range stretched to 10,400 kilometers, enough to bridge continents without a stop. Inside, the aircraft could be loaded with up to 71 standard cargo pallets, spread across 3 decks. No other freighter offered such a combination of volume and reach. Not even Boeing's 700. The A380F's cavernous hold was nearly 60% larger in volume than its American rival, yet it carried only 28% more weight. For dense cargo, engine blocks, machinery, bulk shipments, this was a freight forwarder's dream. But the figures hit a tension that only surfaced in technical briefings. The double-deck design, so impressive in brochures, introduced a problem that kept some engineers awake at night. Most air freight is relatively light for its size: electronics, garments, perishables. With the A380F, operators could run out of allowable weight long before the hold was physically full, leaving expensive cubic meters empty on every flight. Loading also posed a challenge. The main deck and upper deck required specialized equipment, and the complexity of shuffling pallets between levels threatened to slow ground operations. Fast turnarounds, a must for express carriers, suddenly looked less certain. One lead program engineer, reviewing the final specifications, described the aircraft as a paradox: unmatched capacity with a hidden ceiling. The A380F could move mountains, but only if those mountains were dense enough to justify the lift. The promise of 150 metric tons over oceans dazzled customers and analysts alike. Yet beneath the headline numbers, the realities of cargo density and handling hinted at difficulties that would come to define the program's fate. FedEx executives arrived in Toulouse in January 2001 with a sense of anticipation. The ink was barely dry on their order for 10 A380 freighters, each one promising to transform the company's global network. For FedEx, the numbers were irresistible. A single A380 freighter could haul 150 metric tons of express packages across the Pacific, linking Memphis to Shanghai or Paris in a single hop. The order book grew quickly. UPS matched FedEx with its own commitment for 10 aircraft, and leasing giant ILFC added 5 more. By 2005, Airbus had secured 27 firm orders for the freighter variant, a launch book strong enough to anchor the program. Inside the industry, this momentum was electric. Cargo operators and analysts crowded air shows, trading projections about what the A380 freighter might mean for the future of freight. The aircraft's range, 10,400 kilometers, opened direct routes that once required costly refueling stops. Its 3-deck design meant 71 pallets could be loaded at once, slashing the number of flights needed to move bulk shipments. For express carriers, the promise was clear: fewer aircraft, fewer crews, and lower unit costs on the world's busiest trunk routes. Executives at FedEx spoke publicly about the A380 freighter as a game changer. They saw it as the backbone for a new era of high-volume, long-haul express service, perfectly timed for the explosive growth in Asia to North America trade. UPS, too, envisioned a future where mega freighters would shuttle between global hubs, feeding a network that stretched from Louisville to Hong Kong and Dubai. Airbus sales teams celebrated each new letter of intent, confident that the A380 freighter would soon join the ranks of aviation's most important workhorses. The early years of the program were marked by optimism and ambition. In press releases and interviews, Airbus leaders described the A380 freighter as the next logical step for a world that demanded more capacity, more reach, and more efficiency. The order book stood as proof. With 27 aircraft committed by 3 industry giants, the freighter looked unstoppable. The stakes, for both Airbus and its customers, had never been higher. The turning point came with a single phone call in November 2006. FedEx, once the A380F's most enthusiastic backer, had run out of patience. After months of tense negotiation and missed milestones, executives in Memphis ended discussions with Airbus. The official announcement landed on November 7th. FedEx was canceling its entire order for 10 A380 freighters. The decision was not just about delays, though those were severe, but about trust. FedEx's leadership, facing unreliable timelines and shifting delivery promises, chose certainty over ambition. Within days, the company placed a new order for Boeing 777 freighters, a move that signaled a loss of faith in the A380F's future. Inside Airbus, the news hit like a shockwave. FedEx had been the anchor tenant, the first to sign and the largest by value. Their departure exposed just how fragile the foundation really was. The A380F order book, which once seemed solid, now looked brittle. As contractual exit clauses came into play, the risk of a full collapse became real for the first time. Airbus scrambled to reassure the remaining customers, but the momentum had shifted decisively. UPS, the other pillar of the program, watched events unfold with growing concern. By early 2007, their confidence had eroded. Delays had stretched well beyond the thresholds written into their contracts, and the technical guarantees, payload, fuel burn, delivery slots, were no longer credible. On March 2, 2007, UPS formally canceled its order for 10 aircraft, citing the inability of Airbus to meet agreed timelines. The company chief operating officer David Abney made the calculation clear. Without schedule certainty, the A380F could not fit into UPS's global network strategy. Like FedEx, UPS pivoted to proven alternatives, placing orders for Boeing 767 and Boeing 747-8 freighters. With both anchor customers gone, the viability of the A380F disappeared almost overnight. The order book evaporated, and any hope of a commercial launch faded with it. The cascade of cancellations left Airbus with a program stripped of its foundation, forcing a reckoning inside the company's boardrooms and triggering an urgent search for a way forward. In the spring of 2005, a software mismatch at the heart of Airbus's assembly lines brought the A380 program to a grinding halt. The culprit was CATIA, a computer-aided design platform used across Airbus's European factories. German teams in Hamburg had designed wiring harnesses with an older version, while French engineers in Toulouse used the latest release. On the screens, every cable and connector fit perfectly. But as sections arrived for final assembly, the reality was chaos. More than 500 kilometers of wiring snaked through the fuselage, but none of it lined up as planned. Engineers discovered that cable runs were too short, connectors did not match, and entire harnesses had to be ripped out and rebuilt by hand. Each A380 required over 300 miles of wiring, much of it custom-shaped to fit around the double-deck structure. For the freighter variant, the challenge multiplied. Cargo bays demanded even more complex routing for power, avionics, and environmental systems. Floor reinforcements and specialized cargo loading equipment added layers of complication. Production schedules fell apart. At the Hamburg plant, teams worked around the clock, stripping out newly installed harnesses and rerouting cables with hastily produced blueprints. Assembly lines backed up, with half-finished fuselage sections piling up in hangars. Every delay on the passenger model pushed the freighter timeline further into the future. Suppliers, already stretched by the demands of the main program, struggled to keep up with the endless stream of engineering change orders. One senior engineer described the scene as a wiring meltdown. The mismatch between digital plans and physical reality forced Airbus to freeze production, reassign thousands of workers, and pour resources into fixing the passenger model. For the A380F, the fallout was immediate. Design teams were pulled away, and the freighter's unique wiring requirements languished. As months dragged on, the cost of rework soared into the hundreds of millions. What began as a software oversight spiraled into a full-blown industrial crisis, with the cargo giant's future hanging in the balance. In February 2006, a confidential report landed on the desks of Airbus executives. The numbers were stark. Development costs for the entire A380 project had soared past 12 billion euros, far beyond the original budget. Every month of delay on the passenger model burned through millions more. The wiring crisis had already forced engineers to rip apart completed sections, and the freighter variant, once central to Airbus's vision, now looked like a costly distraction. Board members convened in Toulouse and later in Hamburg, facing a choice that would define the company's future. The passenger A380 was overdue and under siege from angry airlines. The freighter, without a single prototype, was slipping further behind and losing its anchor customers. In October 2006, the executive summit stretched late into the night. Financial models projected negative returns for the A380F, even if production resumed. The board studied confidential memos showing that every engineer assigned to the freighter was one less available to fix the passenger backlog. The risk was clear. If Airbus failed to deliver the core A380, the fallout would threaten the entire company. As debate wore on, union leaders from IG Metall and Force Ouvrière pressed their case. They warned that abandoning the freighter would cost jobs in Hamburg and Toulouse, and could trigger strikes and public protests. For many workers, the A380F was more than a product line. It was a promise of stability and pride. But the math was relentless. With hundreds of millions already lost to rework and the passenger model's reputation on the line, executives made their call. They froze all major spending on the freighter and redirected resources to salvage the main program. The decision reverberated through Airbus's factories. Overnight, teams working on cargo-specific wiring and floor reinforcements were reassigned. Suppliers received terse notices. Freighter components were postponed indefinitely. Union officials staged demonstrations at plant gates, demanding answers and guarantees. Inside the boardroom, the mood was somber. The A380F, once the symbol of Airbus's global ambition, had become a casualty of survival. Company leaders knew they had chosen the lesser evil. But the cost in trust, morale, and lost opportunity would linger long after the boardroom lights went dark. By 2007, the air cargo market had moved on. The A380F's promise of 150 metric tons over intercontinental distances no longer outweighed its drawbacks. Airlines and analysts compared it to the Boeing 787F, which could fly nearly as far with just 2 engines, burning less fuel per ton and landing at a wider range of airports. The numbers were stark. The 707F offered a payload of 102 metric tons and could reach almost 9,000 kilometers, but its fuel efficiency and lower trip costs made it the new benchmark. Meanwhile, the A380F's massive size demanded specialized ground equipment and reinforced runways, facilities available at only a handful of global hubs. Most airports simply could not accommodate its wingspan or weight, limiting operators to a narrow set of routes. Cargo carriers, facing thinner margins and rising fuel prices, wanted flexibility and frequency, not just raw capacity. The market verdict was clear. Efficiency and adaptability now mattered more than size. In May 2007, Airbus froze the A380F program, issuing formal notices to suppliers and halting all engineering work on the cargo giant. The announcement landed with a sense of finality across the industry. For airlines and freight operators, the market gap was immediate. Boeing's 747-8F, already in advanced development, became the natural heir to ultra-large cargo routes. Orders that once belonged to the A380F quickly shifted to Seattle, while converted 747-400s and 777s flooded the market, offering carriers proven performance at a fraction of the cost of a new super jumbo. Airports that had invested in A380-compatible cargo infrastructure, from Dubai to Anchorage, scrambled to repurpose their facilities. For Airbus, the suspension was more than a project pause. It was an admission that the world's largest freighter would never leave the drawing board. In the space of a single season, the future of air cargo realigned around flexibility, efficiency, and aircraft that could actually be delivered. In 2007, Airbus officially canceled the A380F after 27 orders had once signaled a new era for cargo aviation. Factory delays, cost overruns, and shifting market demands, documented in internal board minutes and press releases, forced the company to redirect resources to the passenger A380. While the A380F promised a 150-ton payload and a range of 10,400 kilometers, no prototype ever left the ground. Key technical files on the final engineering reviews remain undisclosed, leaving some details about the project's final months unclear. Today, twin-engine freighters like the Boeing 777F dominate, and converted passenger jets fill most major cargo routes. The A380F's fate shows that even the most ambitious designs must fit real-world economics and infrastructure. In the end, the cargo giant that never flew stands as a documented lesson. In aviation, timing and adaptability often matter more than size or vision.